All right. Well, this is a big day. Very excited. Welcome everybody to our very special webinar, 5 Traps to Avoid Before Committing to OKRs. We are privileged, honored, and blessed, among many things, to have Larry LaSalle, who's the founder and CEO of Agility IQ. Larry is one of the most respected and sought after thought leaders in the world when it comes to agile and OKR implementations. He's been in this business for over a decade, and he's worked with some of the largest companies in the world, helping them drive cross-functional growth, results, outcomes, alignment, focus, and transparency. Companies like Bank of America, Duke Energy, and American Family Insurance. My name is Jeremy Epstein. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of GTM Hub. And we're very privileged to have you here today, Larry. Let's just jump right into it, because one of the things that we hear from everybody is that OKRs are very simple in concept. I explained it to my 12-year-old the other day. She got it. Yep. But I mean, of course, she's a naturally very gifted 12-year-old, but she got it. Yep. But the challenge we all hear is it's really difficult to execute. We've heard stats like 72% of OKRs fail. We've heard so many of our clients and customers say we've had false starts. Today, we're going to talk about the traps that people fall into, the mistakes that they made, and just looking forward to hearing your knowledge. We've got a great group of people on the call with us today, and let's jump right into it.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for that very warm welcome. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think of it myself much more simply. There's this idea of working in an organization and working on an organization. I work on organizations. So I kind of consider myself just more of a organizational mechanic, if you will. People will come to me, they'll say, hey, you know, work's moving too slow, we're not getting anything done. So I'll pop open the hood, I'll look under the hood, I'll say, hey, looks like your strategy filter is completely missing. So all work is just flowing into your system of delivery. And so we need to fix that. Let's put a filter in there, call it our strategy filter, to filter out some of this work that we're doing that's just the wrong work. So that's kind of what I consider myself doing. I have to go in there and read between the lines and kind of find out what's really the root cause of some of the problems organizations have. So
you're kind of like an enterprise mechanic.
Yeah, enterprise mechanic. That's exactly
I like it.
Right.
That could be your new title. That's free, by the way. You can have that one.
Cool.
So let's jump into it, Larry. I mean, no one's here to talk about our backgrounds or whatever. No one cares. Let's talk about the first trap here. Why don't you tell us about that?
So this is the first trap of a lot of different types of initiatives that organizations will endeavor to take on. This is the leadership trap. Now, this is an interesting perspective on it, because I feel like, those in the OKRs community could be causing a little bit of this trap themselves. Because what we find, if you do pick up any literature about OKRs, one of the very first things you'll see in the opening paragraph is, hey, wild success by Google, Intel, LinkedIn, Netflix, et cetera, et cetera. And you look at that and you're like, well, if an organization wants to go off and try and become, wildly successful like these organizations, okay, let's go the OKR route. The challenge, though, is it wasn't just OKRs that made those organizations successful. It was the leaders behind those organizations that leveraged OKRs to make those organizations wildly successful. OKRs were a part of the way they led, and they built it right into the way they interacted with their leadership team. So they set the tone. So trap one, leadership, the solution is we need to get them engaged. They need to be the ones kind of leading this initiative. If that's not the case, we're going to kind of struggle right from the beginning.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about this. And, you talk about leadership. Mm-hmm. We have some, world-class leaders here on the slide. Are there any common traits that you've discovered about the kinds of leaders who are more likely to either adopt OKRs to more effectively drive them through organization? Are there, what are the traits that you see among the leaders who are successful in driving these through their organizations?
Leaders that are driving with a vision, leaders that are playing the long game. They're willing to take their organization on a journey, and they value things like alignment in their organization, clarity of the work that we need to be doing. Those are the kind of leadership traits that you're looking for.
Now, when you go in, and obviously, you're part of the icon team, and you start talking to people, come and say, hey, we want to be like Google, we want to be like Intel, everybody wants that kind of growth. Are there things that you help your clients and your potential clients really look at themselves carefully and really do that deep assessment? It's like, do we have what it takes? Do we have the kind of leadership to really make this successful? Like, what are some of the things that they should be looking? What are the telltale signs that you might advise?
Most don't come to you endeavoring to be this grand organization. They just want to be good at being who they are. And you definitely have to be willing to have direct conversations about some of the things that are happening. But it's the right conversations, right? I mean, we have to talk about how do we ensure that we're doing the right work at the right time for the right reasons, and how do we ensure that the work we're doing is, being accepted and it's valuable for our customers. In that vein, I mean, there's lots of conversations that need to be had with all levels of the organization, but organizations tend to get super tactical. And so it's really about kind of installing the right pieces and parts that allows them to continue being tactical. The moment they feel like they have to slow down, it's like they get like a high level of anxiety, so you have to be able to help them keep moving, but making small shifts. I like to say, change in an organization is like 4 or 5 huge giant steps and 1,000 little tiny ones.
Gotcha. No, that's good. One last question. In all of your years fighting the battles in OKR, and we should mention, Larry, that the nickname that you have in the OKR world is Obi-Wan, because you're like, admit it, right? I called you Obi-Wan, and you said that's what other people call me, so I'm not making this up because you've been there.
I didn't. If I told you my history with Star Wars, you'd laugh at me. It's not that strong, but nonetheless, people have offered that up to me.
We could, well, I think it's well deserved. It's well deserved. Hopefully, you don't have the same kind of end that Obi-Wan had, but that's a different webinar. If we're talking about last question before we move on to trap number 2. Have you ever had to have an uncomfortable conversation with an organization saying, "Look, the leadership here, you guys or gals, sorry, you people don't have what it takes"?
For one of the traps coming up that I want to talk about, I'm going to tell you a real short story about kind of uncomfortable, conversations. So if we can hold to them, that'd be great. But I could tell you that anytime you got to call out somebody at that C level or above about strategic clarity or strategy, it's uncomfortable because, there's this inherent sense that I'm in this position I'm in because strategic clarity is what I do. But it's kind of an understanding, versus, execution, so to speak.
So for all of our attendees here who are looking to drive this type of engagement in their organization, some of them are in senior leadership positions, some people may not be. Any advice you could give them about how to have some of those conversations? So it's not necessarily uncomfortable, but just to make sure that the leadership really understands what they're signing up for.
I think everybody's got to be willing to, when it comes to change, right? Change is not easy for organizations, but what we teach at various levels of the organization is the willingness to initiate a conversation, the willingness to ask tough questions. Generally speaking, leaders aren't going to back down from a tough question asked by someone in the organization, but if they don't ask, then leaders won't have an insight into the things that people are missing. So kind of establish an understanding of what it is you think the organization is trying to do, and then be willing to drive some tough conversations and ask some challenging questions. And then if you're in a position of influence at all, try to make it work for you so you can start to be an example for others in the organization. Got it.
All right. Leadership, trap number one. What's trap number two?
So trap number two, a few of these traps I think are a little bit, there's kind of a lot to them. So trap number two is what we're calling the commitment test. So what we're looking to do with trap number two is, what are the signs and symptoms and things that we're looking for in the organization that tell us that we have our eye on the ball, we're doing this for the right reasons, we know the why, the what, the how, things of that nature. So the first one of this commitment test is this idea that if I was to cross the paths of anybody in the organization that's responsible for funding, for solutions, for execution, if I was to ask them, why are you guys doing OKRs? And they could answer the question from a healthy perspective, something other than because we have to.
Right.
That's a good test, and it's a good check. The second one is that our path for adopting OKRs is clear. I know what's expected of me. I know what's expected of my team. I know when we're going to be doing certain activities. I continue to know the why behind those activities, and I got the resources that I need to be good at it. And then I know the team that's leading the implementation. This is an important one because it starts to give a sense that we're not all off on our own. We're being coordinated and orchestrated by a group of people that bring a special expertise, and it gives a level of comfort to kind of, we have a team that really is bringing, a sense of the how behind all of this.
So one question about that one. I mean, when you're dealing with a company like Bank of America, or, these are big global organizations. I mean, we work with Societe Generale and CNN and Adobe, some of the largest organizations on the planet. Not everybody's going to know the person leading the OKR implementation. How does that sort of knowing the team scale when you're dealing with larger organizations?
Well, part of that is scaling that team, right? They should be able to take this team and, depending on how their rollout strategy is designed in a larger organization, you're typically going to go through the organization fairly methodically and by line of business or by product line or something, and you're going to do it. It's hard to go big bang in a very large organization. So the team that's doing this, they're going to be the ones that are behind the communication. They're going to be the ones that are behind some of the internal training that's happening, facilitating some workshops and things of that nature. So inevitably, given that this is kind of a commitment test, review of things, we're looking for them to know that team. That's why I like to say, in a larger organization, we almost kind of want to have this OKRs management office, so to speak, something that kind of builds it not only as something that we're trying to do, to achieve some specific outcomes, but it's operationalized itself within our organization in an entity that kind of leads it and makes it stick.
Yeah, we tend to call these people the OKR champions, right? And it's almost like a team of OKR champions all throughout the organization. Gotcha. Okay, sorry, keep going here.
So the communication, you're going to see a thread of this kind of following John Kotter's model for change, his 8 steps, right? Where we get down and it says communicate, over communicate from 10 to 100x. So the communication, the regular communication is an important piece here where, like that first OKR cycle to me is critical, right? I want to be getting like weekly communication for that first month. And then maybe the next 6 weeks or so, I want to get communication every couple of weeks. And then, as we come out of that cycle, again, I want to go back to weekly, and that communication is telling us, what we're going to be doing, when we're going to be doing it. It's starting to share kind of the wins, the challenges, starting to get some of the voice of the teams coming through, sharing their experiences. So communication, when we're trying to really institutionalize this and help it to kind of reshape the way we work together, is an important piece.
Gotcha.
Getting trained. You talked about OKR champions. We talked about there's OKR facilitators. There's the basic, X's and O's understanding of OKRs that everybody needs to have. If we have, like you mentioned, OKRs being simple but not easy, I think is kind of paraphrase what you said there. That's the idea, is if we launch ourselves off with too simplistic of an understanding, we're not going to get the essence of what we're really trying to accomplish. And so that creates a challenge.
Yeah, that's one of the toughest things, I think, when you get into OKRs. It's almost like getting into that Buddha mind, if you will, and just realizing this is a different mindset. It's not just like another activity that you're going to do.
Yeah. I generally describe it as a new muscle we need to develop. I'm very picky, and when I use mindset discussions, I got to be deep into a discussion before I get to mindset. But new muscle development is certainly, the immediate thing people can relate to.
That's our next webinar, is the difference between muscle and mindset. Fine, we'll do that. That's great. Done.
Okay, tools and resources I need to succeed with OKRs. So this is just, I know, where I'm going to be keeping my OKRs. I know the people that can support me if I have to tap into a champion or a facilitator, help us with a workshop or understanding, remind me, what a good OKR looks like, how we score them, et cetera, et cetera. So, having the place to keep them, it's all important aspects to make people feel like, okay, I can do this.
So you're saying that it's spreadsheets, not the place to go?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one right answer to this one, but we'll save that till later, right? Keep going.
Yep, you got it. And so leaders are doing company level OKRs. This is the practice what you preach, right? That we're not telling the organization to do OKRs. We're actually setting an example, and we're doing it at the top. So building on the last one. So, but this being a commitment test, these things being in place are all super important to know that. Yep, I think we're covering our bases. We're off on the right step. So
I mean, one thing you hear from everybody is if you're not committed, it's just not going to work. And I think this is a great list of things to test whether you are committed. Yeah. All right, trap number 3. What have you got for us?
Well, actually, we got to go quickly.
Oh, my bad. Solution. Yeah, I got to carry away there.
I'll move through solution because we're offering a solution for each of these, and I know we've got to be conscientious of time. True. So this is what I call the pitfall awareness. It's the Lippitt-Noster model for managing complex change. And if you look up at the top, the area circled in red, that's describing successful change that they put together. Vision, consensus, skills, incentives, resources, action plan equals successful change. Where this gets interesting and why it's the pitfall awareness idea is as you move down, if vision is missing and then you go to the far right, you get confusion. If consensus is missing, you get sabotage. And I've seen these because I've pulled this out many times, If incentives are missing, you get, skills are missing, you get anxiety. Incentives, you get resistance. Resources, you get frustration, and then no action plan, you get treadmill. That's why, an action plan just simply is a key piece to OKRs. So this is just a good thing to keep in mind when you're setting out on change, that there is a recipe for success.
Yeah, I really like this. I've seen this 10 times, and every time it just sort of helps you understand a little bit more. But
reinforces it.
No wonder I feel so much anxiety all the time. All right, moving right along here.
Okay, now we're going to go to pitfall.
Now we're on to trap number 3.
Yeah, trap number 3. So I think we kind of came up with this idea of the floating strategy when we talked about this a little bit. Vague strategy. I call it the 1 or 2 word strategies. And so the reason this is important is because we're trying to establish strategic clarity kind of as an input to OKRs. At least that's my sense when I think about doing it, particularly in larger organizations. So you look at some of these like digital experience, if the first question that comes to mind is, what does that mean? Or why? Those kinds of questions, retention, like, what are we fixing? What are we trying to solve for? And that's why when it comes to OKRs, one of the things I like about it in terms of the right way to do it is, you're having to express a complete thought of intention followed by making it aspirational. So it forces you down this path of really, being able to genuinely communicate kind of the why behind it, right, inherently in it. So, but yeah, I call this the vague strategy trap. So the way to fix this now is not what you might expect. I didn't start here in terms of my own sense of where to fix, you know, how to fix the vague strategy. But it's really, for me, it's using a balanced scorecard and objectives and key results. The reason that I like the balanced scorecard is because it has multiple perspectives that it makes you think through your strategy from multiple perspectives. You could go right to OKRs at the top, but you have some constraints. We're only supposed to do 3 to 5. And, you know, so how do we make sure that we've considered our financial perspective, our customer perspective, our operational perspective, and our learning and growth perspective? And so, you know, that to me is what helps, you know, get to a good strategy.
So it's interesting because some people will say, oh, like OKRs are just the latest flavor of some management fad that's balanced scorecard back from Kaplan and Norton in the, you know, early 2000s. But you're saying, no, wait a second, these things actually live in perfect harmony with each other.
Oh yeah, man, because like when I first started, you know, really getting into OKRs, and, you know, of course, the first thing you got to do is really come up to speed. So you're thirsty for knowledge, and you're really out there doing your own research. And I saw these like, hey, OKRs are better. No, balanced scorecards is better. And, you know, it wasn't until maybe, you know, the past year or so where you start to, you know, see things pop up. Hey, no, these things actually can work together. And there's a reason. And they both fundamentally have the same kind of idea behind them. We're expressing an objective, and then we're going to determine how we're going to measure the objective. And then we're going to develop an action plan to monitor our progress toward those objectives. So structurally, they're not entirely different. I just like the balanced scorecard for the particular strategy aspect of things.
So, I mean, so OKR is really just, if you're already committed to balanced scorecard, it's a great layer to sort of, it's like turbo boosting what you've got. If you don't have balanced scorecard, can you get some of that strategic clarity anywhere? Or are you saying they both need to go in there? Because that's sort of what you're implying here. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just asking.
No, I mean, I'm making that, I am implying that because I feel like a balanced scorecard alone, you know, like I've known organizations that have a balanced scorecard, and then you go into the organization and you just don't see evidence, you know, particularly, I mean, I think organizations have a systemic problem of just putting too much work in their system of delivery and too much big pieces of work at that. So you start to see this divergence from a operational and execution standpoint from what the strategy was. And so you have to be able to use that balanced scorecard as a filter, but then continue that alignment and goal setting and, you know, OKRs further down into the organization.
Got it. No, got it. All right.
So
trap number 4. Sorry. I keep getting ahead. I'm always excited for the next trap.
I just know that, you know, we got this out there. So this is just there. This is a strategy map view of the balanced scorecard. It's a kind of a summary view, but it gives you that idea of those perspectives that you have on the left side and the way to think about it on the right side. So we're going to move on. Okay, so this goes to, you know, the idea of understanding objectives from like a definition perspective. I understand that objectives are, you know, this concise statement outlining an aspirational goal. And I know that key results need to be measurable and they need to tell me what success looks like for those objectives. But if that's all I know, then I really kind of, I'm running with a definition. And so remember, we talked about OKRs versus OKR framework, I think. And so this is the framework is I get the purpose. I understand, I get the new muscle development. I understand the behaviors and practices that need to change for this to work. So that's why I say I get and understand the OKR framework definition. You know, it's an alignment and strategy framework that seeks to ensure organizational clarity by creating an environment, right? An environment of common goals and shared objectives. That's really kind of the definition I think we need to work with in order to have the conversation about all that needs to really change for OKRs to be more deeply successful and part of the operations of how we work.
Yeah, I think our CEO, Yvonne, likes to say that OKRs are like diet and exercise. If you do them, you're going to be successful. You're going to lose weight. You're going to get in better shape. If you just lift weights, that may not get the job done because you'll go out and have a bunch of ice cream afterwards. But if you understand the purpose and the framework and you follow that, like, success is basically guaranteed.
Yeah.
No, this is my favorite slide in the whole deck. So right now, everyone can just hang up right now. There's really nothing. I'm kidding. This is great. Good stuff.
Yeah, good. So solution, I think where I like to anchor the solution is in the OKR cycle. And you'll see different versions of an OKR cycle. Some will have 4 steps, some will have 5. But it's important to understand the OKR cycle because it starts to give you back to that commitment test, this kind of checklist of things that we need to be doing and doing right for OKRs to work. So you establish enterprise clarity. That could be OKRs, that could be a balanced scorecard, whatever it is. But it's starting at the top, enterprise clarity, right? And then you've got this co-creation and localization, which is this is the mechanical way that we create our OKRs. We do it horizontally and vertically. We do it with our groups. This is the co-creation. We do it with groups that we work with. We do it with our, the leadership teams above us, the teams that report into us, however we're doing that. And then we localize by creating them as a team, right? The trap, in this space would be managers hand you your OKRs and say, okay, here you go, you're off and running, right? Third step is having an action plan. What are we going to do? And then more to the new muscle development here is these frequent check-ins and scoring. How are we doing against our OKRs? And then lastly is the quarterly reviews and calibrating based on the outcome. What did we learn? What do we need to modify here? What conditions have changed from where we started to where we are today that we need to account for as we get into this new cycle?
One question on the co-create and localize, because I know I personally struggle with that, especially when I joined GTM Hub and started to get into exercise the OKR muscle, if you will. My old muscles were, of course, well, I'm the CMO. I'm supposed to give, this brilliant insight about what the team's supposed to do. That's actually 100% wrong. How do you help executives who are, there was a great question here. I saw that Adam Kincaid asked about the commitment coming from leaders and how to get leaders engaged and committed when they may not be. Not saying that the people in Adam's organizations are there. He's just speaking in hypotheticals, of course. How do you help executives who may not have this muscle of allowing everybody, or just saying, here are my OKRs, go figure it out? How do you help people start to build that muscle so they can be comfortable with this co-creation and localization?
All kinds of things that you do in that front, right? There's conversations about, hey, we have to have a systems thinking point of view. We have to think of the entirety of our system and how it works and what are all the moving pieces and parts. We can't just think about the work that we're trying to push through the system without understanding the ability for that system to actually deliver on our execution, right? On our strategies. So you're encouraging the kind of the escalating the view of things and escalating the perspective. So that's kind of one level of discussion. You're having it in a slightly different way on being a little bit high level with it, but that's kind of the sense that you're trying to establish up in the game. But then you go down a couple levels and you say, look, we have to intentionally get our leaders out of execution and up into strategy. And so here's the things that we need to start to do differently so that there's this sense that we don't need some executive, basically trying to resolve issues that are happening in execution, so to speak. We want to get there up a level. So
yeah, that's been a hard muscle for me to break and build a new one, just because
it's a proverbial cast of vision and be willing to hand the organization complex problems and solve them. A huge amount of trust has to happen there. So yeah, it's big, but it's rewarding. It's rewarding for the people.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's
it's
what
rewarding for
knowledge
them too.
economy, knowledge workers are all about, going all the way back to Drucker. So I'm with you on
Right.
that one. All right,
Yep.
let's move on here before my team
Okay.
yells at us for going too long on each slide.
Okay. The fundamentals are lacking. So the fundamentals piece here is what we're really looking at is just kind of what you might see if you're learning this from like a best practices standpoint. We've got way too many objectives, right? And key results. Our key results aren't measurable, you know, or our key results look more like tasks. Like if I see a date in an OKR, it's a huge red flag to me because I know if I read the sentence, it's going to have a task. It's some output versus an outcome, and so that's a trap. Talked a little bit about using spreadsheets, you know, to track them. They just don't scale. I like to jokingly say, inevitably somebody's going to start using pink in the spreadsheet too, and then we've got that to deal with. So what are the fundamentals that we have here? Too many. They're not statements of intent. You know, leadership's not writing them. So just those kind of, you know, fundamental things that we need to make sure that we get right.
So if you see pink in your spreadsheet, it's time to move on.
It's time to move on from this.
It's over. That's like the early warning sign of death on the horizon. Gotcha. You're flatlining at that point.
That's right.
Good to know.
Yeah.
That's
and
all.
The training fundamentals, you need to have the training and stuff like that too. So.
Gotcha.
Fundamentals. So solution.
Bring it.
Solution. So this is the have a plan, follow the plan solution to start with, meaning, you know, everything we kind of talked about having a team that leads, having communication, providing training, knowing the OKR cycle, you know, knowing, you know, what this, you know, execution looks like, and then providing resources to, you know, help to support teams when they're creating, you know, their OKRs. So, and making sure that we value some of the things that are important in making OKR successful: transparency, alignment, that kind of clarity, you know, knowing that we're trying to get into establishing a new muscle, being outcomes focused, all very important things. So that's solution one. Solution two, training. We talked about training. We got to be able to get exposed to the big picture of what it is that we're trying to do. Otherwise, I like to say we're taking the long and windy road there. We may never learn things that we needed to learn in order to, you know, have a full understanding. Getting back to understanding the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've been relentlessly focused on building the best partner network in the world, and we're honored that you are a part of that. And what we have told every single one of our clients is that the software alone, even if it's the greatest software on the planet, which naturally it is, it's not going to get you there. It will not get you there unless you do the training, unless you have the coaching, unless you have all the things that you just talked about. Like it's just too big of a new muscle / mind shift. Yeah. To work. And that's why you have to do this. Otherwise, you're going to end up just with a false start, which, you know, is favorite phrase of people who are doing it the third or fourth time.
I think it's, you know, it's commendable of GTM Hub to have that perspective, because it would be all too easy for, you know, to try and just be the best software platform, but to help be, you know, a great platform that you know, understands the purpose behind them and wants to enable organizations to do more, you know, I think it's great.
We've actually I was just talking to our chief revenue officer today, and he was saying that we just had one of our largest deals ever closed, but this was about a year in the making, because when they first came to us, as much as they were excited about it, they weren't ready. And we said to them, no, you're not ready for us. You need to spend the time working with partners. You need to understand this. Get the training first, because we would rather you take longer, even though it's not as much fun for us always. We would rather you take longer, because then you will be more successful. And that's where all the work that you've been doing for those years is just so critical. So.
I mean, the bottom line of it I do a ton of work in the Agile space. That's more in that space, frankly. But if they don't do it right, they blame Agile, or they blame OKRs.
Right.
OKRs don't work for us because of XYZ. It's really a value alignment conflict, right? They're still valuing something in their organization that's inconsistent or incongruent with the things that need to be valued to make those new ways of working actually work for the organization. So
well said. Well said.
You want to talk to this one, man?
I don't want to toot our own horn. I mean, look, we're very fortunate to have nearly 1,000 organizations around the world, nearly 75,000 different users, working with some of the largest organizations, like I mentioned, Adobe and Societe Generale. We're talking to them the other day. They've grown from 1 to 50 teams in the last year, and TomTom's grown from 2 to 40 teams in the last year, among others. Just hundreds of people using this, and what everybody says is like, there's that moment where you have the pink in the spreadsheet and you just realize it's never going to work, and you need a purpose-built OKR platform to allow you to do this and to work cross-functionally, because what OKRs allow you to do is to unlock the growth from across the organization and to connect these various disparate data silos and the 160 integrations that we have to support that. You'll never get it done. Now, I always say everyone's going to use OKRs. They may not use our platform, but they're going to use OKRs, and they're going to use a platform to do it. So, hopefully the software speaks for itself, but at the end of the day, every organization in the future is going to use OKRs. They're all going to use an OKR platform, and hopefully we have an opportunity to earn their business. We don't need to spend more time on this slide, Larry, but I appreciate the shout out. And there we go. There's
about us. We can do about us, or if we're out of time, we can go to the Q&A.
Yeah, we can keep going. That's the self-congratulatory logo slide, so we're happy to put that up there to show off. But we don't need to spend more time on that. We're honored just to be here and to have you as a partner and to learn from your knowledge and experience, because it's so helpful for me, especially as we're doing our Q4 OKRs right now. So it's a good reminder that I need to practice what we preach.
Cool. And then some information about us over at Icon Agility. So some of the main things: been in business since 1992, specialized primarily in business agility and scaling agile in organizations. We are the first gold SPC partner with the Scaled Agile Framework, if you're familiar with that. Have some SAFE fellows on staff, some SPCTs, which is a great accomplishment. Over 100 lean agile, coaches and consultants, and I think we're a thought leader in the business agility space, which is still emerging a bit, and of course, helping organizations implement OKRs at scale. So
thank you for that, Larry. And I'm here to tell you, you are a thought leader in the space, and they don't call you Obi-Wan for nothing. There are a couple of questions that have come in over the course. I wanted to make sure we get a chance. Stephen Starusto, he said, we mentioned anxiety, and that just could be my East Coast neurotic type A mentality. But I think it's something we're all feeling right now, especially now as people are going through. I mean, the last 9 months have been change at, speaking of, Star Wars hyperspeed, what have you. So he wants to know, what suggestions do you have to help the majority of people who maybe have never worked remote before, who are doing this for the first time, to be able to adapt to this change and to be agile, to have developed this new muscle. It's an opportunity, but it's also very can drive a lot of anxiety. So any thoughts based on your experience, given what we've gone through?
One thing I'll tell you, I like to say that in organizations, the smallest atomic unit considered should be team, right? Team. So people need to be able to work together and collaborate as a unit. And so the remote thing, we have tons of good technology at our disposal, but we need to lean on one another and we need to collaborate with one another. And I think that's a big part of it. And we need to make sure that, we've had the opportunity to establish the foundation and we do have the resources that we need in order to be able to get the work done. So I mean, those are I think some of the fundamentals for me.
Gotcha. So Jess Wynn asked if the objective, should it be an aspirational statement that has some sort of change behavior imperatives for the team as part of it? Like, how do you sort of bring those ideas of change of behavior and the OKR aspirational ideas? Are those two things should be separate? How do you sort of help people think about it?
I mean, I think, the way I look at it, it's focus on the outcome. Whatever the outcome is that you're trying to accomplish, craft that statement and then ask the question why a handful of times in order to refine it and get deeper and deeper into, what is the true outcome we're trying to accomplish. If we can continue to answer the question why, we're probably not deep enough just yet. That, and include some some verbs and some specific things to make it feel actionable, and and you use the term aspirational. So focus on the outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And when we send out, I know some people have asked about the recording, which we will send out. We'll also include a link into, we have an OKR design score tool that people can use to just practice getting better writing at OKRs. I mean, I know I struggle a lot with writing OKRs well that are effective, that are aspirational. So I think that's really good advice. Let me, another question just came in here from Hannah. I hope I pronounced that, Hannah Marshall. She asked if objectives could be described as stretch goals. Are objectives stretch goals by another name, or are we confusing is that different types of thinking modalities that are come in conflict with each other?
No, they're not different modalities. I think, the key result is where we want to stretch. How will we know we were good? We want to, I mean, there's the whole stretch element is there. And so I think the key result is where I want to see an expression of more stretch, because that's what's the measure, that's the outcome that we're trying to accomplish. So if you're asking like, where do we need to stretch? You're going to express that more in the key result, because that's where you're going to push your target out a little bit further than what you otherwise would.
Gotcha.
Now, you don't want success to be guaranteed with OKRs. If success is guaranteed, you've not stretched enough. So you want to leave an OKR workshop or a working session a little bit uncomfortable. You don't want to leave like stressed out, but you want to leave a little bit uncomfortable.
That alone sounds like a change management issue, given that there's so many organizations where if you don't hit your numbers, you're an automatic failure, you're in the bottom 20%.
Yeah, that kind of thinking can't live on. We need to be okay with, failure. We need to be okay not hitting the mark in some of these things, because we want to be able to learn to get that. We want to be able to learn to get good, right? And you're not going to, you don't start out great, right?
Yeah, no, that's for sure. All right, another question that came in here. This is great. But while we're asking, one of our key questions in the chat is, what Netflix series are you currently binge watching, Larry? Is there anything you're...
Oh, no. So, okay, great question.
That's the most important question of the webinar.
I'm not a binge watcher of much, although I have. But let me plug in for a great movie I just watched called The Social Dilemma. I watched it on Netflix. That was an interesting movie, man. That was a really, really interesting
Don't
movie.
Even get me started on that one. I am totally with you. That's some scary stuff. Okay, so Amy Bowley asks, should all levels of the organization use quarterly OKRs, or does it make sense at the higher levels to have annual OKRs that the teams try to make progress on throughout their quarterly OKRs? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the way I like to think about this is the KR portion should be quarterly. The objective, you don't necessarily want to just force a change at the objective if there's still benefit to doing it. Just refactor or calibrate your KR portion. That being said, at the top of the house, they'll generally look and feel more annual based. There's a number of reasons that drive that, from funding to other kinds of decisions to existing practices and stuff like that. But so I'm less concerned about time boxing the objective and more concerned about time boxing the outcome, the KR portion. That's me.
Well, speaking of outcomes, one of our outcomes was to be done at quarter of. And as you can see, we've failed. because we're 2 minutes past. So, you know, it was a stretch goal for us because we knew we'd be able to chat a lot. So, you know, 70%, we're almost there.
Right. And I need 35 seconds because I need to let them know that we have some training available to them. So you can look at iconagility.com/training. You'll find a couple course offerings. We have a 1-day facilitators course, a 2-day certified coach course. We've got some great things around assessments and stuff we can do to help if you're currently doing
Everybody should just take this right
target. Yeah. So now I know we're over, so we get a 0.7 for our score because we
get a 0.7. So but that's success in the OKR world. So we did it. Yes, for us. Exactly. Hey. Awesome. Well, Larry, your nickname of Obi-Wan is well earned. Yeah, you are clearly a Jedi of this. You've thought about it a lot. I'm very grateful to you. We're particularly grateful to Icon Agility for a great partnership and for being the co-presenter, co-sponsor of this webinar. We're obviously grateful to everyone who joined us. So if you have questions for Larry, for me, or anybody else, please don't hesitate to reach out. You will be getting the follow-up recording. And with that, I think we will say, oh wait, Jeswin just called me Chewy. I guess that's good. That's a good nickname. Jeswin, you win. Congratulations, you win. There you go. That's really good. And last question. Tana Marshall asks, do those classes come with an actual certification?
They do come with a certification and a digital badge too that you can put on your LinkedIn.
Oh, a digital badge. Fantastic. Everybody's a winner. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Everyone, please stay safe, sane, healthy, all those things that are going on in our crazy world right now. Thank you for joining us. And Larry, just a pleasure to listen to you and bask in the glow of your infinite wisdom. So
thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
And your great backdrop. Take care. Take care, everybody. Thank you.